The facility's dimly lit corridors hummed with alien energy. Elena's hand hovered over her sidearm as she led her team, her voice a sharp whisper. "Jonas, how much longer?" Lieutenant Jonas Vale crouched beside an alien terminal, his brow furrowed. Strange, shimmering glyphs projected above the console, as his hands moved rapidly over a tablet jury-rigged to interface with the alien systems. "Another 2 minutes. Maybe less if you stop distracting me," Jonas snapped, sweat dripping down his face. Elena's sharp eyes scanned the area. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and her jaw tightened. "You don't have 2 minutes. Speed it up." Behind her, Private Dorn shifted nervously, his grip on his rifle tightening. "Captain, what if—" "We focus," Elena interrupted. "We don't think about what if. We get this done." The faint footsteps grew louder. Dorn's breathing quickened. "They're coming," he whispered. Elena signaled for silence. She raised her hand, motioning for her second operative, Carver, to take position by the corner. Carver nodded, his face grim, and melted into the shadows with his weapon ready. Jonas muttered under his breath, his fingers flying faster. "Got it. Data is downloading. Give me another 30 seconds to crack the encryption." The corner of Elena's lip twitched. 30 seconds might as well have been 30 years. She activated her comm unit. "Drace to Fleet Command. Victor, we're cutting it close. Do not engage until I give the signal." A warm, steady voice crackled back. "Acknowledged, Elena. But the clock is ticking." "I know," she replied tersely. Victor's tone softened. "You've got this. Hurry back to me." She didn't respond, shutting off the comm. Jonas let out a triumphant grunt. "Done. I've got the tech." He slung his pack over his shoulder, the alien device glowing faintly through the fabric. The footsteps stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then, a sharp alien screech tore through the air, followed by the heavy stomp of approaching guards. "They found us," Elena said. Carver fired the first shot, the sharp crack of his rifle echoing in the tight corridor. A green blast from an alien energy weapon barely missed him, searing the wall behind. "Move!" Elena barked, raising her weapon. She fired with precision, her shots downing 2 advancing guards. Jonas and Dorn sprinted ahead while Carver laid down suppressive fire. The team rounded a corner, their boots slamming against the metallic floor. Dorn stumbled, nearly falling, but Elena grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. "Keep moving, Private." Ahead, Jonas frantically scanned the map on his device. "Extraction point is through that door." They burst into the room, only to find a squad of alien soldiers waiting. The hulking figures snarled, raising their weapons. Elena's heart pounded. She turned to Jonas. "Hurry up. My husband is coming." Jonas nodded, diving behind cover to activate the door's manual override. Elena and Carver opened fire, their shots keeping the enemy at bay. A blinding explosion rocked the room as Victor's fleet began its diversionary bombardment above. Elena smirked grimly. "That's my husband. Get that door open." Elena shouted, her voice sharp over the chaos. Jonas grunted as sparks flew from the terminal. "I'm working on it. These systems are fried." Alien lockdown protocols just kicked in. Carver fired another burst, his rifle's muzzle flashing as alien soldiers pushed forward, their screeches cutting through the smoke. "We don't have time for this," he yelled, ducking as a plasma bolt scorched the wall above his head. Elena glanced at the glowing text slung over Jonas's shoulder, its alien glyphs pulsating faintly. The mission had to succeed. Failure wasn't an option. "Jonas, you've got 10 seconds, or we'll find another way." "Don't rush me," Jonas snapped, sweat pouring down his face. Elena didn't reply. She raised her weapon and fired again, downing an alien who had crept too close. The creature crumpled, its clawed hand still gripping a glowing blade. Her instincts flared. This wasn't just a random patrol. They knew. "They're funneling us," Elena muttered to Carver. "This is too coordinated." "What does that mean?" Dorn's voice cracked with panic as he fired blindly, missing his mark. "It means we're about to be boxed in," Elena replied coldly. "Stay sharp." Jonas let out a triumphant shout. Doors open. Let's move. The team rushed through the opening as Jonas slammed the panel, sealing it behind them. For a moment, there was silence. Only the sound of their heavy breathing echoed in the narrow corridor. This way, Jonas said, glancing at his map. Extraction point is straight ahead. Elena nodded, taking point. Eyes up. They won't stop now. As they moved, the corridor suddenly shifted, the faint hum beneath their feet growing louder. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to ripple. What the hell is that? Dorn asked, his voice trembling. Some kind of energy displacement, Jonas replied, his tone grim. They're reconfiguring the facility. Carver cursed under his breath. They're cutting us off. Elena's mind raced. She pulled up her comm unit and keyed into Victor's frequency. Fleet Command, we've hit a complication. They're closing the routes to extraction. Victor's voice came back, calm but firm. What's your position? 2 clicks from extraction. We've got the package, but they're locking us in. If we don't move fast, we're done. There was a pause. Then Victor's tone hardened. Hold position. I'm sending reinforcements. No time for that, Elena snapped. If we don't break through now, the mission fails. Elena, Victor began, but she cut him off. Trust me, I'll get us out. Just hold them off up there. She killed the comm before he could argue. The floor beneath them began to rumble. Jonas cursed as he nearly lost his footing. They're destabilizing the section. We have to move now. Then we move, Elena said, her voice like steel. They sprinted forward, the rumbling growing louder as the corridor began to collapse behind them. A deafening roar echoed through the structure as a section of the ceiling caved in, dust and debris filling the air. Through the chaos, Elena's focus never wavered. She led her team through the narrowing path, her instincts honed to a razor's edge. The extraction point was just ahead, its reinforced door gleaming like salvation. Then the ground beneath them shuddered violently, and alien soldiers burst through the side walls, weapons raised. Ambush! Carver shouted, firing immediately. Elena dove for cover, her weapon blazing as she returned fire. Plasma bolts streaked past her head, the heat singeing her cheek. Jonas, get that door open. Jonas didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the terminal, skidding to a stop as he began hacking into the controls. We're not going to make it, Dorn muttered, panic overtaking him. Hold the line. Elena barked, her tone cutting through his fear. She fired again, her shot taking down another alien. We're getting out of here. Carver gritted his teeth, laying down suppressive fire as the aliens advanced. Jonas worked frantically, his fingers a blur over the controls. Almost there, he muttered. The door hissed, beginning to slide open just as an alien charged at Jonas, its blade raised high. Elena moved without thinking. She threw herself forward, tackling the alien before it could strike. They hit the ground hard, and the creature snarled, slashing at her with its claws. She grunted in pain as one raked across her arm, but she didn't let go. With a swift motion, she drove her knife into its throat. Doors open, Jonas shouted. Move, Elena yelled, pushing herself to her feet. The team bolted through the opening as the facility continued to collapse behind them. Jonas slammed the controls, sealing the door once more. Elena leaned against the wall, breathing heavily as she clutched her injured arm. Everyone intact? Carver nodded, his face streaked with soot. Barely, Dorn sank to the ground, his hands shaking. That was too close. Jonas glanced at Elena, concern flickering in his eyes. Captain, I'm fine, she said, straightening. Her gaze hardened as she looked ahead. We're not out of this yet. Keep moving. The extraction point was within reach, but she knew the fight was far from over. The extraction point loomed ahead. A wide hangar bay with a single human shuttle prepped and waiting. Its engines hummed softly, but the space was eerily quiet, too still. Elena's instincts flared like an alarm. She raised a fist, signaling the team to halt. Something's wrong, she said, scanning the room. Jonas frowned. There should be guards swarming this place. There are, Elena replied, her voice low. She pointed to faint distortions in the air near the shuttle. Cloaking tech. Advanced. They're waiting for us to get closer. Carver cursed under his breath, gripping his rifle. What's the play, Captain? Elena's mind raced. Time wasn't on their side. Every second spent here risked not just their lives but the mission. She pulled a small EMP grenade from her belt, weighing the odds. Jonas, Dorn, stick to the shadows and circle wide. Flank them. Carver, you're with me. We'll draw their attention, she said, holding up the grenade. When I toss this, we move. On my mark. Jonas hesitated for a moment before nodding. Got it. Dorn followed, his hands still trembling but his steps silent as they disappeared into the dim corners of the hangar. Elena glanced at Carver, who gave her a curt nod. Ready when you are, he said. She activated the grenade, its soft hum building as she lobbed it toward the distortions. The pulse exploded in a ripple of blue light, and the hangar seemed to shimmer. A dozen alien soldiers flickered into visibility, their cloaking fields disrupted. Mark! Elena barked, charging forward with Carver at her side. The aliens reacted instantly, raising their weapons, but Elena's team was faster. Carver opened fire, his precise shots taking down 2 enemies before they could retaliate. Elena dove behind a crate, her sidearms snapping off controlled bursts that forced the remaining soldiers to scatter. On the other side of the hangar, Jonas and Dorn emerged from the shadows, catching the aliens in a deadly crossfire. Plasma bolts and bullets lit up the room in a chaotic dance of destruction. Elena's focus sharpened as she spotted the leader, a hulking alien in ornate armor directing its troops from cover near the shuttle. Its barked orders were sharp and decisive, and the soldiers rallied under its command. We take out the leader, the rest will fold, she called out, already moving. Carver nodded, laying down suppressive fire to pin the others down. Elena sprinted low and fast, weaving through the chaos until she was within striking range. The alien leader turned, its glowing eyes narrowing as it raised a massive energy blade. Elena didn't give it the chance to strike. She slid under its first swing, coming up behind it and driving her combat knife into the vulnerable joint at its neck. The alien staggered, letting out a choked roar before collapsing. The tide turned instantly. The remaining aliens faltered, their movements disjointed as they tried to regroup. Jonas took advantage, gunning down 2 more, while Carver finished off the last with a clean headshot. The hangar fell silent except for the hum of the shuttle. Elena stood over the alien leader's body, breathing hard, her knife dripping with dark blood. Clear, she said, turning to her team. Jonas approached, his face a mix of relief and exhaustion. Shuttles still intact. Systems are functional. Then we're leaving, Elena said firmly. Load up. The team quickly boarded the shuttle, Jonas heading straight for the controls while the others secured their gear. Elena dropped into the co-pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the hangar's entrance. Jonas, get us airborne now, she ordered. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and they lifted off just as the doors to the hangar burst open, revealing another wave of alien soldiers pouring in. Plasma bolts streaked past as the shuttle accelerated, punching through the energy barrier and into the open sky. Elena activated the comm trace to Fleet Command. Extraction complete. Prepare for rendezvous. Victor's voice came back immediately, a mixture of relief and determination. Copy that. We're holding position. You've got incoming multiple bogies on your 6. Jonas cursed as the shuttle's sensors lit up. They've scrambled fighters. 3 on intercept course. Evasive maneuvers, Elena said, strapping herself in. Dorn, man the turret. Carver, get ready to deploy countermeasures. The shuttle shuddered as the first plasma bolts streaked past, close enough to make the hull groan. Jonas pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through the atmosphere as Dorn returned fire, his shots wild but forcing the pursuing fighters to scatter. Hold it steady, Dorn yelled, his voice strained. We're not built for this kind of fight, Jonas snapped, his hands gripping the controls tightly. Just keep us alive, Elena said, her tone calm despite the chaos. The first fighter broke off, circling around for another pass, but Carver was ready. He launched a flare, the sudden burst of light confusing the alien sensors and sending the fighter spiraling off course. "Two more," Elena said, her eyes fixed on the sensors. Victor's voice crackled over the comm. "Elena, I've got a squadron en route to cover you. Just hold on." "Better make it quick," Jonas muttered, jerking the controls as another bolt glanced off their shields. Dorn finally landed a clean hit, his shot punching through the lead fighter's cockpit and sending it spiraling into a fiery explosion. "One left," Elena said. Before the final fighter could fire, a human squadron streaked into view, their weapons lighting up the sky. The alien ship didn't stand a chance. "Escort secured," Victor said, his relief evident. "Bring her home." Elena allowed herself a small smile as the shuttle broke free of the atmosphere, the stars opening up before them. The mission wasn't over, but for now they'd won. The shuttle docked with the human fleet's flagship, the Resolute. As the hatch hissed open, Elena stepped out first, her boots hitting the deck with purpose. Victor was waiting, his uniform pristine but his expression lined with concern. "Elena," he said, his voice steady but his eyes scanning her for injuries. "I'm fine," she replied before he could ask. She gestured to Jonas, who carefully handed off the stolen alien tech to a waiting engineer. "Get that analyzed immediately. It's bigger than we thought." Victor glanced at the device, his jaw tightening. "Brief me." "Later," Elena said, lowering her voice. "Right now, we need to focus on defense. The Acheron aren't going to let this go. They'll come for it. They already are," Victor replied. He motioned toward the tactical display on the wall. A fleet of Acheron ships was closing in, their formation sharp and predatory. "How long until they're on us?" Elena asked. 15 minutes, maybe less," Victor said. "We're outgunned and outnumbered. If they break through, this tech won't matter." Elena nodded, her mind already working through the possibilities. "Then we make sure they don't." She turned to Jonas and Carver. "Gear up. We're taking a fighter squadron. If they want to play hardball, we'll hit them where it hurts." Victor caught her arm. "Elena, you just got back. Let someone else handle it." She met his gaze, her voice firm. "I don't ask my team to do anything I won't do myself. You know that." He hesitated but eventually let her go. "Be careful," he said softly. "Always," she replied. The team moved quickly, suiting up and boarding their fighters as the fleet braced for impact. Elena's voice came through the comms as her squadron launched. "Listen up. We're not here to win the fight. We're here to disrupt their formation. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't stick around. Keep them off balance so the fleet can hold the line." Acknowledgments came in from the squadron, their voices tense but determined. The first wave of Acheron fighters surged forward, their sleek, angular ships cutting through the void. Plasma bolts lit up the battlefield as both sides clashed. Elena pushed her fighter into the fray, her hands steady on the controls. "Target their lead destroyer," she ordered, weaving through a hail of enemy fire. "If we take out their flagship, we'll scatter the rest." Jonas's voice came over the comm. "You sure about this? That thing's got enough firepower to vaporize us." "That's why we're not giving it the chance," Elena shot back. "Stick to the plan." The squadron dove toward the massive Acheron destroyer, dodging swarms of fighters and defensive turrets. Elena's pulse quickened as they approached the ship's central reactor core, visible through a glowing energy field. "Carver, status on the payload?" Elena asked. "Armed and ready," Carver replied, his fighter pulling up alongside hers. "You're not going to like how close I need to get." "Do what you have to," Elena said. "We'll cover you." Carver's fighter broke formation, speeding toward the destroyer. The rest of the squadron followed, drawing fire away from him as he closed in on the reactor core. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. "Jonas, take out those turrets." "Dorn, watch Carver's 6. Plasma bolts streaked past as Jonas targeted the destroyer's guns, his precision shots silencing one after another. Dorn flew in tight formation with Carver, blasting enemy fighters that tried to intercept. Carver reached the reactor core, his ship shuddering under the stress of the destroyer's shields. Dropping the payload. Now, the explosive device detached from his fighter, hurtling toward the reactor. Alarms flared across the enemy fleet as the destroyer's shields began to collapse. "Get out of there!" Elena shouted. Carver's fighter veered sharply, but an enemy bolt clipped his wing. Smoke poured from his engines as he spiraled out of control. "I'm hit!" Carver yelled. "Hold on," Elena said, breaking formation to intercept. She pushed her fighter to its limit, closing the distance just as the reactor detonated. The explosion ripped through the destroyer, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. A chain reaction followed, taking out several smaller ships nearby. "Carver, eject," Elena commanded. His voice came back strained but determined. "Can't," engines locked. "No time." The line went dead as his fighter disintegrated in the blast. Elena's hands tightened on the controls, but she forced herself to stay focused. "All units, fall back to the fleet. The destroyer's down. Let's finish this." The remaining Acheron forces, disoriented and leaderless, began to retreat. The human fleet pressed the advantage, driving them back until the battlefield was clear. Back aboard the Resolute, Elena stepped out of her fighter, her face set in stone. Victor was waiting, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said. "At a cost," she replied, her voice heavy. She looked at Jonas and Dorn, who stood silently nearby, their grief evident. "We lost a good man today. We don't waste that sacrifice." Victor placed a hand on her shoulder. "We won't. The tech you brought back. It's going to change everything." Elena nodded, but her eyes were distant. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. "Let's make sure it does."